Hello guys, in this video, we're retaking a trip back in time, all the way to the American diners of 70 years ago. Back when neon signs lit up the morning fog, coffee was 5 cents, and the smell of sizzling bacon drifted through chrome-plated doors. Today, we're exploring what breakfast really looked like in those classic diners, the foods, the sounds, the people, and the moments that made early mornings in America unforgettable. 1. The sizzle of the flat-top grill. The sound that woke America. If you walked into a diner at sunrise in the 1950s, the very first thing you'd notice wasn't the chrome counters or the smell of fresh coffee. It was the sound. That sharp hiss of bacon strips hitting the flat-top grill, the crackle of eggs as they spread out on hot steel, the rhythmic tap of a metal spatula scraping and flipping breakfast for a hungry morning crowd. Back then, the grill wasn't just a cooking tool, it was the heartbeat of the diner. Short-order cooks moved with speed and precision, filling the morning air with a kind of kitchen music. Every sizzle meant a new order starting. Every scrape meant another plate almost ready. And every clang of the spatula on steel reminded customers that their breakfast was fresh, hot, and made right in front of them. For millions of Americans, that sound became part of daily life, a comforting reminder that the day was beginning, the world was waking up, and that the local diner was ready to serve. It's a sound we don't hear much anymore. But for those who remember it, the sizzle of the flat-top grill is something they'll never forget. 2. 5-cent bottomless coffee, the cup that never ran dry. 70 years ago. You didn't need fancy flavors, foam art, or complicated menus to enjoy your morning coffee. All you needed was a diner, a simple ceramic mug, and 1 nickel. Back then, coffee wasn't treated like a luxury, it was a morning essential, brewed strong and served endlessly. A waitress would walk by with a steaming glass pot, ask you more, hun. And before you could reply, she'd already be topping it off. No limits, no receipts, tracking refills. Just bottomless coffee, poured with the kind of warmth you only found in family-run diners. The flavor, bold, a little bitter. Sometimes strong enough to wake the dead, as regulars like to say. But it was real coffee, brewed in big metal percolators that never took a break. And the best part? It brought people together. Truck drivers, factory workers, traveling salesmen, all starting their day with the same simple ritual. Hands wrapped around a warm mug, newspapers open, bacon sizzling in the background, and that familiar feeling that no matter how tough the day might get, it could always begin with a 5-cent cup of comfort. It was inexpensive, uncomplicated, and always waiting for you. A small luxury in a world that moved much slower. 3. The short-order cook show breakfast wasn't just served, it was performed, in diners 70 years ago. Short-order cook wasn't hidden in the back kitchen. It was right there in front of you, center stage, behind the counter, putting on a show every single morning. These cooks were artists of speed. With a cigarette tucked behind one ear and a spatula flipping like a magician's wand, they worked in a rhythm that seemed almost rehearsed. Orders flew in rapid fire. 2 eggs over easy, short stack, coming up, ham and cheese, make it quick. And the cook answered with a nod, a flip, and a bang of the spatula. He cracked eggs with one hand, flipped pancakes without looking, and slid hot plates down the counter like he was dealing cards in a casino. Every motion was fast, precise, and practiced because during the breakfast rush, there was no room for mistakes. Customers loved watching it. Kids sat on swivel stools, mesmerized by the sizzling grill. Adults admired the control and timing. Regulars knew the cooks by name and trusted them to get their order right every time. And when the cook called out, "Order up," and slid a hot plate onto the counter window, there was always a sense of pride, like he had crafted something special in record time. It wasn't just cooking, it was a performance, one of the many small moments that made American diners feel alive. 4. The classic 3-egg breakfast, a hearty plate that fueled a generation. 70 years ago, breakfast wasn't something you grabbed on the go. It was a full meal, built to carry workers through long shifts in factories, fields, and offices across America. And no diner symbolized that better than the classic 3-egg breakfast. This was the plate almost everyone ordered. 3 eggs cooked exactly the way you liked them. Bacon, ham, or sausage sizzling hot on the side. A scoop of golden home fries, crisp around the edges and soft in the middle. And of course, 2 slices of toast. Buttered by hand and served with a jar of grape or strawberry jelly. Simple, affordable, and filling enough to keep you going until lunch. What made it special wasn't just the food. It was the care behind it. Cooks cracked each egg fresh onto the grill. Bacon wasn't microwaved or pre-cooked, it crackled in its own fat until perfectly crisp. Home fries were made from real potatoes every morning, chopped by hand before sunrise. For millions of Americans, this wasn't just breakfast. It was routine. It was comfort. It was the plate that started the workday. And no matter what diner you walked into, whether it was a chrome-trimmed roadside stop or a tiny neighborhood counter, the 3-egg breakfast tasted almost exactly the same: reliable, warm, honest. A plate that defined mornings in the America we remember. 5 buttermilk pancakes stacked high, a fluffy tower of morning comfort. In the diners of 70 years ago, pancakes weren't just another menu choice. They were a morning ritual, one that filled the entire room with the smell of warm batter and melting butter. These weren't the boxed mixes we know today. Diner cooks made their pancake batter from scratch, real buttermilk. Fresh eggs, a scoop of flour, and just a touch of sugar. The result? Thick, fluffy pancakes that browned perfectly on the hot, flat-top grill. The sight was unforgettable. A stack of 3 or 4 golden rounds, steaming as they hit the plate. A square of real butter melting down the sides. And a warm drizzle of maple syrup, sometimes the real thing, sometimes the old-fashioned diner syrup that people still miss today. Kids loved them because they felt like a treat. Grown-ups ordered them because they reminded them of home. And travelers passing through found comfort in knowing that no matter where they were in America, a plate of diner pancakes always tasted familiar. Cooks often made them with flair, flipping them high in the air, stacking them with style, or serving them with a smile and a joke. And when the morning rush hit, those stacks of pancakes moved fast, plate after plate, sliding down the counter, disappearing just as quickly as they arrived. For many, it wasn't just breakfast, it was a moment of simple joy, a little sweetness to start the day. A warm memory from the America we remember. 5 buttermilk pancakes stacked high, a fluffy tower of morning comfort. In the diners of 70 years ago, pancakes weren't just another menu choice. They were a morning ritual, one that filled the entire room with the smell of warm batter and melting butter. These weren't the boxed mixes we know today. Diner cooks made their pancake batter from scratch, real buttermilk. Fresh eggs, a scoop of flour, and just a touch of sugar. The result? Thick, fluffy pancakes that browned perfectly on the hot, flat-top grill. The sight was unforgettable. A stack of 3 or 4 golden rounds, steaming as they hit the plate. A square of real butter melting down the sides. And a warm drizzle of maple syrup, sometimes the real thing, sometimes the old-fashioned diner syrup that people still miss today. Kids loved them because they felt like a treat. Grown-ups ordered them because they reminded them of home. And travelers passing through found comfort in knowing that no matter where they were in America, a plate of diner pancakes always tasted familiar. Cooks often made them with flair, flipping them high in the air, stacking them with style, or serving them with a smile and a joke. And when the morning rush hit, those stacks of pancakes moved fast, plate after plate, sliding down the counter, disappearing just as quickly as they arrived. For many, it wasn't just breakfast, it was a moment of simple joy, a little sweetness to start the day. A warm memory from the America we remember. 7. The birth of the Western omelet, a bold breakfast for bold mornings. In the 1950s, diners were experimenting with breakfast in ways that would soon become classic American staples. One of the stars of this culinary creativity was the Western omelet, a hearty mix of eggs, diced ham, onions, and bell peppers, cooked right on the flat-top grill. It wasn't fancy, it wasn't delicate, but it was satisfying. Cooks would beat 3 fresh eggs in a metal bowl, pour them onto the sizzling grill, and quickly add the colorful mix of vegetables and savory ham. The aroma alone could pull anyone off the sidewalk into the diner. A hint of sweetness from the peppers, the saltiness of ham, and the soft, creamy texture of the eggs created a combination that became unforgettable. The Western omelet was more than a meal. It was a statement of American mornings. Bold flavors, simple ingredients, and a plate that could fuel a full day of work or play. Kids eyed it curiously. watching the vibrant colors tumble together. Truckers and factory men saw it as a hearty, no-nonsense breakfast that wouldn't quit on them. And for the diner, it was a dish that could be made fast, served hot, and always kept customers coming back. It was a small innovation, but one that left a lasting mark on American breakfast culture. An enduring memory from the America we remember. 8 glass jars of fresh jelly, a little sweetness within arm's reach. 70 years ago. Every diner table held a simple but irresistible temptation. Glass jars of jelly. Grape, strawberry, orange marmalade, small treasures tucked into metal caddies, waiting for eager hands. These weren't the squeezable, mass-produced packets we see today. They were full jars, often made locally, with a rich, fruity taste that came from real fruit and sugar. Every diner had its own favorites. Some preferred the deep purple of Concord grape. Others the sunny brightness of marmalade, with a slight temps. Breakfast was in tea complete without a smear of jelly on warm toast, or a dollop atop a fluffy pancake. Kids loved dipping fingers or toast corners straight into the jars. Adults used a knife, spreading carefully, savoring a moment of sweetness to balance the salty bacon or savory eggs. There was a tactile joy to it, unscrewing the lid, hearing that little pop, the aroma of fruit spilling out. And these jars did more than just flavor breakfast. They connected diners to local flavors and created a familiar, comforting ritual. Even in the middle of a busy morning, the simple act of reaching for a jar of jelly felt personal, nostalgic, and perfectly American. It's a detail so small, yet so memorable. One of the many little touches that made breakfast in the 1950s diner a sensory experience. 9 steel pie cases spinning slowly, glimpse of dessert before breakfast even begins. Step into a diner in the 1950s, and near the counter you'd notice round steel pie cases, spinning slowly under glass domes. Apple, cherry, lemon, meringue, pecan, each slice gleamed in the morning light, tempting customers before they even ordered their eggs or pancakes. These pies weren't just decoration, they were part of the diner's charm. The waitress would twirl the case with a practiced hand, sliding a slice onto a plate with ease, and the aroma of fresh-baked pastry would fill the air. For kids and adults alike, the sight of those spinning pies was irresistible. Even the early morning crowd, often in a hurry to get to work, couldn't resist stealing a slice to enjoy with their coffee, the crisp crust, the fruity filling. The whipped meringue topping, each slice was a tiny indulgence, a reminder that mornings could be joyful and sweet. Diners prided themselves on their pies. Some were baked in-house, following family recipes handed down through generations. Others were brought from local bakeries, still warm and fragrant when they arrived. The steel pie cases, slowly rotating under the glow of neon lights, became symbols of abundance, a promise that even in the earliest hours, there was a treat waiting for anyone who walked through the door. It was a little piece of morning magic, one of the many details that made breakfast in the 1950s unforgettable. Etched forever in the America we remember, 10 hash browns fried in bacon grease, golden, crispy, and unforgettable. In the diners of the 1950s, hash browns were more than just a side dish. They were a point of pride, made from freshly shredded potatoes. These golden morsels were fried in the leftover bacon grease from the morning's sizzling strips, giving them a flavor no modern kitchen could replicate. Cooks would scrape the raw potatoes into a hot skillet, pressing them gently as the oil hissed and popped. Edges turned crisp and brown while the inside stayed soft and tender, a perfect contrast that diners craved. The aroma alone could stop anyone in their tracks, a warm, smoky scent that mingled with the sizzling bacon and eggs on the flat-top grill. Every diner had its own twist. Some pressed them into patties, others left them loose and fluffy. And the regulars knew exactly how they liked them, extra crispy, golden brown, or lightly salted. Hash browns weren't just food, they were comfort on a plate. They were the little indulgence that made mornings feel special, whether you were grabbing breakfast before heading to work or savoring a lazy weekend morning. For those who remember, the taste of hash browns fried in bacon grease is unforgettable, a small but perfect detail that captures the heart of the America we remember. 11. Milkshakes served at 7 a.m., a sweet treat for every hour of the day. In today's world, milkshakes are usually reserved for lunch, dinner, or a weekend treat. But 70 years ago, diners served them bright and early, sometimes as soon as the doors opened at sunrise. Chocolate, vanilla, strawberry, simple flavors. But made with real ice cream and fresh milk, churned thick and creamy in the classic metal mixers. Cooks poured them into tall glass cups, added a swirl of whipped cream, and topped them with a maraschino cherry. For kids on the way to school, a milkshake was a magical reward. For adults, it was a small indulgence, a way to start the day with a little sweetness alongside eggs, bacon, or pancakes. And it wasn't just about flavor. There was a ritual to the milkshake, the whir of the metal mixer, the condensation forming on the glass, the clink of the straw as it hit the bottom of the cup. It was an experience, not just a drink. Diners proudly displayed their milkshake makers on the counter, showing off the thick, creamy swirls as the morning crowd filed in. Order after order, the shakes were served with a smile, often accompanied by a joke or a kind word from the waitress, small moments of warmth that made the diner feel like home. Milkshakes at 7 a.m. may seem unusual today, but back then, it was simply part of life, a sweet note in the soundtrack of mornings in the America we remember. 12. The diner counter regulars, familiar faces in familiar places. Step into any American diner in the 1950s, and one thing would quickly become apparent. Some of the morning crowd weren't just customers, they were family. The counter regulars were the heartbeat of the diner. They had their favorite stools, their preferred cups of coffee, and an unspoken rhythm with the waitresses and cooks. Each morning, they would slide onto the same stool, nod to the cook, exchange a few words with the waitress, and settle in as if they'd never been anywhere else. These regulars were a mix of truckers, factory workers, farmers, and neighborhood locals, all drawn to the same comforting routine. They swapped news, joked about the day ahead, and sometimes argued playfully about politics or sports, all while waiting for their breakfast to arrive. For the diner, these regulars were a living connection to the community. They knew the best ways to cook an egg, the exact crispness of bacon everyone liked, and the subtle differences in coffee strength. And in return, they received friendly familiarity, a small sense of belonging in a busy, changing world. For anyone passing through town, the counter regulars added to the charm. Their presence made the diner feel alive, warm, and welcoming. They were more than customers. They were the story of America's mornings, quietly written every day in the America we remember. 13 glass bottles of ice-cold milk, simple pleasure straight from the farm, before cartons and plastic jugs became the norm. Milk came in glass bottles, delivered fresh to diners every morning. And in the 1950s, few things signaled breakfast like the clink of those chilled bottles being set on the counter. The milk was often still cold from the farm, carrying a crisp freshness that made eggs, pancakes, and cereal taste richer. Some diners kept them in small metal tubs filled with ice, letting the bottles chill while customers sipped and poured. Kids would tap the glass gently, watching the creamy liquid swirl, while adults poured slowly, savoring a moment of quiet before the day's work. Even the sound of the bottle being opened, a satisfying pop of the cap, became part of the diner's morning ritual. It wasn't just about hydration. It was a taste of simplicity, a connection to farms and local dairies, a reminder that breakfast wasn't just food. It was fresh, wholesome, and honest. In a world that was quickly modernizing, glass bottles of milk symbolized care, tradition, and the small details that made diners special. 14. Toast from vintage chrome toasters. Simple, golden slices made by hand. In the diners of the 1950s, toast was more than a side. It was a ritual in motion. Long before pop-up, pre-sliced convenience. Chrome toasters lined the counters, levers ready to launch slices of bread toward golden perfection. Cooks or waitresses would slide thick, fresh slices of bread into the slots, pull the lever, and wait as the heating elements worked their magic. In a few minutes, a soft, warm slice would emerge, its edges crisped, its center tender, ready for butter, jelly, or a dollop of homemade preserves. The smell was unmistakable, warm, comforting, slightly nutty. Mingling with the aroma of sizzling bacon and brewing coffee, customers often watched the toast pop up with anticipation, a small moment of delight in the early morning rush. And it wasn't just the mechanics, it was the personal touch. A waitress might butter it perfectly, fold it neatly beside the eggs, or offer an extra slice to a regular without being asked. Even the simplest toast became part of the diner experience, a detail that made mornings feel complete. For many, toast from a vintage chrome toaster wasn't tea, just food. It was part of the memory of breakfast in America. 15. The 10-cent donut tray, a little morning indulgence for everyone. In 1950s diners, right next to the cash register or perched on the counter, you'd often find a tray of fresh donuts, a small treasure waiting for early risers. Each donut cost just 10 cents, a price that felt like a tiny indulgence anyone could afford. They came in all sorts of shapes and flavors: sugar-coated rings, cinnamon twists, and chocolate-dipped treats. The aroma, sweet, warm, and inviting, drifted across the diner, tempting kids on the way to school and adults on their way to work. The donuts were more than just a snack. They were a ritual, a treat to enjoy with coffee, or a quick bite for those who didn't have time for a full breakfast. Cooks often baked them in-house, keeping them fresh and soft, or brought them in from a local bakery, still warm from the oven. Regulars had their favorites. Kids learned to peek over the counter to grab one as a reward for finishing their morning chores. And for anyone passing through town, a 10-cent donut was a small taste of American generosity and simplicity. It's easy to forget now, but those little trays of donuts were a signature of the diner experience. A sweet moment in the morning, a memory of community, and one of the countless details that make breakfast in the America we remember unforgettable.